All right, what's going on, y'all? So welcome to another episode of Full Circle Podcast. It is your favorite brother Joseph, as always. Listen, we've got a lot to get into today, and I am hoping that I have enough time to share with you every single thing that has been going on because, good Lord, it is overwhelming. There's like tons of stuff that has been happening, specifically over the weekend. And I'll tell you, just when I think that I'll be able to cover a lot of these details and give you enough context, something else happens. And then something else happens. I close my eyes and I wake up the next morning and I think it's crazy, but it gets even crazier. We're going to talk about several things today. So hold on to your seats, grab some water, grab something, and some popcorn. I don't know. This is just absolutely mind-boggling. And, at some point you start realizing that sometimes reality is more entertaining and more wild than anything that anybody on any sort of drug or substance could come up with. So we're going to dive into that today. Before we do, I just want to say, as I do at the beginning of every episode, thank you to all of our viewers, our supporters, followers, all of you that comment and that give so much of your feedback to the channel. We really appreciate you doing that. If you haven't done that, go ahead and follow us on Instagram and TikTok @_FullCirclePod and @FullCirclePod. And if you're listening on Spotify, maybe you're listening on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast from, as well as here on YouTube, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and leave us a comment. As I always say, it is free to support a nigga unless you want to do more. We genuinely appreciate it as always. So now that I get that out of the way, let's dive right into today. So if you're out there looking for a job and you've been having trouble, you probably already have been following this, but I'm going to fill everybody in because this actually spells something very concerning for the country. In August, the economy only added, or the market only added 22,000 jobs. Okay, now from what I'm reading here, the Bureau of Labor Statistics report said that only 22,000 jobs were added in August, which is the weakest since early 2021, coming right after the pandemic, and also what numbers looked like after the market crashed at the end of the Bush presidency going into the Obama presidency in 2009. Now, we talked about this a little bit in July because we know that Trump went ahead and fired the former BLS chief, Erica McIntyre, and he is now going ahead and putting a new person in place. Now, of course, the problem they're having is that a lot of companies are not filling out these surveys as much, or they're stalling filling out the surveys, and that's creating challenges for them to actually be able to interpret the data they're receiving. Sometimes they get downward revisions later on and they have to report those. Sometimes that comes a month or 2 months after. But the problem with this is that unemployment, which was at 4.2 the previous month, is now at 4.3%. And manufacturing, retail, and logistics companies are seeing contraction, and healthcare and government hiring is showing some buoying numbers. So what this basically is looking like, and economists are even warning about this is looking like stagflationary pressure is on the rise, with wages, of course, going down and inflation continuing to be high and continuing to rise. Now, what this does is, this matters because it slows Biden's rebuilding economy narrative, because that's what Biden was talking about. We obviously saw higher numbers in the past under Biden. There was consistent growth, even though the economy was still showing numbers that were high in terms of inflation. And of course, the prices at grocery stores or at the pump were relatively high as well. But what this is now doing is President Trump on a Truth Social post the other day was saying, oh, look at this, look at what I was saying. I told Jerome Powell that we should, cut interest rates at least by 3 to 4%. But the problem is that Trump is trying to claim a healthy economy under him, blame Biden for all of the bad stuff, while still asking for a rate cut from Jerome Powell, who's the Fed chairman. And the problem with this is, if your economy is healthy, the request or demand or push for the Fed to cut rates would be totally inconsistent and incongruent with the healthy economy. You only usually cut rates when the economy doesn't look healthy or that there's some instability there. Of course, right now, because of these moments that we're seeing and what's happening with the economy and a lack of job creation, now it is looking like that is what Jerome Powell will have to do. This is once again the weakest pace in 4 years, and we're beginning to see declines in manufacturing and in logistics, with economists that are warning, as I mentioned, about stagflationary pressure. Okay, so this is another blow to Trump's narrative that the economy is doing well, that the markets are going to be doing great, that we're just seeing a little bit of a pinch. The markets are continuing to go down, and with a judge last week just ruling that many of Trump's tariffs, the majority of them, are illegal. This is not a win for the Trump administration that is already experiencing a certain level of pressure. Now, to give y'all some context here, I'm just going to briefly play this video for you from the Wall Street Journal so you can get a little bit of insight for yourself, and then you can decide what this means as I provide some extra context as well. So I'm going to go ahead, play this video right now. Let's take a look.
The August jobs report came out, and it showed that hiring was pretty weak, a lot weaker than what economists expected. It showed that the U.S. economy only added 22,000 jobs in August. So these jobs numbers from the BLS are an incredibly important benchmark for the economy. For instance, Federal Reserve officials watch these reports really, really closely to understand, how is the economy doing? Are companies hiring? Are people out of work? But then last month, this report was this possible turning point where the numbers got a lot worse. And not only did the numbers for July get a lot worse, but they said, oh, actually, the past 2 months have been way worse than we thought too. Trump was.
And that's what I meant by the downward revisions that continue to come out of the labor or Bureau of Labor Statistics. Essentially, once again, if you don't know what a downward revision is, it is essentially when the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they already report a jobs number. So let's say for this month, this past month, they said 22,000 jobs, right, were created. And then let's say they come back later on this month or into October, and they say that July's numbers were even worse because we just got information from the surveys, which she'll explain a little more in a second. But we got these surveys from employers, and they're actually telling us what the full numbers look like, or that it may have been worse performance, or maybe those jobs were not maintained. That is what a downward revision is. And so it gives you a genuine picture of what is happening. Let's continue.
Really mad about the jobs numbers last month. And when he fired the head of the agency last month, he claimed the numbers were rigged to make him look bad.
He thinks everything is rigged to make him look bad. You know, when it's crazy how when you point your finger, there's like 4 fingers coming back at you, your thumb and your 3 fingers here. But everything that Trump says it's always someone else's fault, always rigged. At some point, we're not dumb. We know that you just don't know how to take responsibility.
We have done a lot of reporting on the fact that this agency has actually had some pretty big challenges recently in collecting their data. Fewer companies are responding to these surveys, and that makes revisions more likely. It makes it harder for them to correctly say how many jobs the economy has added and put those numbers out in a timely way. I think the next thing to look out for is the confirmation process of this guy that he would like to run the Bureau of Labor Statistics, E.J. Antoni.
So this is the guy that Trump is picking over Erica McIntyre. Some people are concerned that he's just going to be another loyalist. But here is essentially what the Trump administration can really do, because you can't manipulate the job market. Like, people are going to know. You can't try to fudge the numbers. Some other part of the economy is going to show if it's not strong or not. But here's what the Trump administration could do to try to maybe change those numbers. Check this out.
You know, what does he say he wants to do about the jobs reports? Does he propose wanting to change anything? The White House told us recently that as commissioner, he would be focused on increasing response rates to the surveys, but they haven't said exactly how. And they've said he also wants to improve accuracy, but again, they haven't given specifics on how exactly he wants to do that.
Okay, So, as I mentioned previously, and this is just something to keep in mind, once again, there is a major concern with where the economy is going. And I believe I said this to y'all at the beginning of the year or earlier this year. Right now, last year, economists said it. They said that Trump's tariffs and all the stuff that he's been doing so far would throw the economy into a recession either by the summer or by the end of the year. And so far, everything we are seeing is trending in that direction. The economy does not look good. The markets do not look good. There's all this talk about expansion and tariffs and all this money that's coming in, but we know a lot of those deals were already either in place or they are pledges, which do not necessarily guarantee that these will be fully fledged out throughout throughout Trump's term and the end of his term into the new presidency. So once again, we'll continue to monitor this, but it's very concerning all around. Okay, I want to jump over to another situation that happened over pretty much last week, closer to the weekend, of course. So in New York, there were ICE raids in New York and Georgia that were conducted at a Hyundai plant. Over 100 undocumented workers were detained across Queens and Brooklyn in coordinated ICE sweeps. And in the Georgia Hyundai plant, 70 workers were arrested. Many of them were working the night shift. Many of them have been working at some of these plants for quite some time. The administration was arguing that these raids were targeting workers that are utilizing false documents, but critics are saying that this is a political stunt and basically an attempt at Trump's attempt to expand ICE deportations. And as we mentioned before, and as I've said several times, they have justified these claims every single time by saying, oh, it's just people that are illegal or people that are criminals, right? But now it's starting to get to the point that they have not even found the majority of these people to be criminals or terrorists or drug users or anything like that. And this is now leading to an increased amount of concern about what this will look like. Because if you can go from it being criminals to those that are that are nationalized to people that are actually citizens, which it seems to be moving in that direction, then you will be able to justify under the name of criminality any sort of action that you take against people without giving them any sort of due process under the law. And many reports are coming out, even filmed encounters with ICE, where they're saying they're not even telling us why they're arresting us, which was what you have to do. You have to announce why you are arresting people, why you're stopping them to begin with. So civil rights groups are saying these raids are unconstitutional mass detentions, with many groups like the ACLU getting involved. But at the end of the day, there's a major amount of concern around this. And I'm going to show you a video here just in a second that will kind of like just give you some context about what's been happening. But what I think is most important is that we've got to be aware, once again, we've got to be really aware about what is occurring. Because once again, this is according to an ABC News report, the reason for the enforcement action is unclear. Local law enforcement officials said that the operation was led by U.S. Homeland Security investigations, which did not respond to requests for information. And this is once again becoming a problem because it's like, how do you properly respond to what is occurring as a reporter if you don't know what's happening? Okay, so I'm going to go here. I'm going to see if I can pull up this video for you. I think we're having a little bit of trouble pulling up the video for you guys, but either way, we won't even worry about that one. But either way, listen, at the end of the day, when it comes to this particular situation, there are constitutional rules and rights that are being violated, and we've got to stay, once again, up to date when it comes to these things. Because if you're a person that's sitting out there and you're either neutral or you're parroting the idea that this is good and that this is okay, you are basically clearing the way for your rights to be violated. Because once again, if we're turning a blind eye, if our whole context and if we're standing on the solid rock of the Constitution, right? If you're someone that is a constitutional purist, you should be outraged by what you're hearing and what you're seeing, because these are constitutional abuses. Due process under the law. It doesn't matter whether you're a citizen, a non-citizen, a visitor. You have to have due process under the law, which means that you need to be told why you're being detained. You need to be read your rights. All of these things apply, okay? So this is something really to keep in mind and pay attention to. The South Korean government, of course, they went ahead, they negotiated the release of some of these workers because a decent amount of the people that were detained were South Korean. And so now this is raising questions about who these ICE raids are targeting, because in grand scheme, it has been a lot of Latinos and even Haitians. But now it's starting to move towards other groups, and we have to be aware of what's going on with that as well. All right, so moving on here, I want to talk to you a little bit about this expansion of the National Guard and militarizing of cities across the country under the guise of what they say is crime-ridden and infested cities under Democrat rule. But of course, there is not an addressing of the crime in areas like Louisiana, in areas like Mississippi, and even in Memphis, Tennessee, for example, where there's a lot of crime that's going on in red states. This is something that we have to talk about. So over the weekend, Donald Trump posted an AI-generated Apocalypse Now style image of himself in military gear. And I'm going to show you the post right now so that you can see exactly what it looks like. And this is an absolutely disgusting thing, because if you remember anything about this, Donald Trump has been threatening to use the National Guard and the military pretty much against American citizens, right? By having them patrol the streets where there's supposed to be police involved and local law enforcement working to get these things under control, where then it's supposed to go from the mayor and then to the governor, who then calls in support if it is a situation that is completely outside of the local municipality and state control. Donald Trump went ahead and posted this on his Truth Social account, and I'm going to show it to you right now. This is what the post says. I love the smell of deportations in the morning. Chicago about to find out why it's called the Department of War. I really want to sincerely ask you this question. Threatening to use the military, the Department of War. First of all, it's called the Pentagon and the Department of Defense. Donald Trump signed an executive order to change the name to the Department of War. We don't even know why that's happening. It's largely irrelevant. But why is it, number one, that Trump is doing every single thing that he can, signing irrelevant, largely pointless, mostly political, dramatic, and theater-like executive orders that are not helping the American people financially? It's not putting more food on the table for you. It's not taking care of your kids, making the cost of education and making the cost of housing and making jobs more accessible, making childcare more affordable, making food more affordable. But what's even more scary about this is that Trump is threatening using Department of War language. Chicago's about to find out why the Department of War is called the Department of War. This sounds like a declaration of war on American citizens. And the problem with this is it violates protocol of checks and balances and states' rights and power. And what we're seeing right here is not only a violation of the law, but it is a threatening of U.S. citizens and the militarizing and the creation of a police state. This is stuff that Republicans say Democrats want to do. And yet we're seeing it on full display in a Republican administration. Dick Durbin, who was a senator in Illinois, said this was a disgusting move. Governor J.B. Pritzker said the president is threatening to go to war with an American city. And Mayor Brandon Johnson said, quote, "This is beneath the honor of our nation," saying that American citizens should fight back. Now, I don't know if y'all know anything about Chicago. I used to live in Chicago. Chicago doesn't play around. We don't roll over. I know LA, LA does their thing too. LA's pretty tough. But if you want to see tough, let's talk about Chicago and New York, because Chicago and New York City will not play with this stuff. The city has already brought in ice trucks, or excuse me, salt trucks rather, that they typically use to salt the roads when it gets into wintertime. They've brought those in September. And there are many that think that this is going to be to block off the city from allowing the National Guard to enter. There are already National Guard active duty National Guard that are saying, we're not going to take part in any of these unlawful orders because you're not supposed to use the military on U.S. citizens. That is tyrannical. And it would call for American citizens to stand up and fight back against a tyrannical government, which once again, MAGA and a lot of these hyper-constitutionalists would be on the side of these things to fight back against a tyrannical government. Did you not see how many people showed up to the Capitol all across different cities in the United States when these COVID mask mandates came out? We're seeing something that is unconscionable and is absolutely out of proportion, blown out of proportion. The Department of Homeland Security under Kristi Noem, who is an absolute, unqualified, and disgusting individual who has celebrated things like alligator Alcatraz and sending people there, and they've gloated and talked about alligators eating these so-called criminals that they are deporting. They have launched Operation Midway Blitz, which targets undocumented immigrants with criminal histories. And there are now protests that are happening in Chicago, where 2,000 people rallied downtown against what they call a federal occupation. And the Pentagon is right now prepping for a National Guard deployment to Chicago, which critics are saying this is a possible posse comitatus violation, which we talked about a little bit last week. This is a test of federal versus local authority and a violation of the Constitution. And once again, this raises the alarm of militarization of domestic immigration enforcement. So we're going to continue to look out and see what is happening. Of course, it is very, very important that people are standing up against this, continuing to be informed, get out in the streets, exercise your right to political protest. Do it peacefully, do it safely, don't violate any laws, but show up in numbers and make your voices heard, because we have to stand up to what's going on here. I'll continue to keep you updated on this, but once again, another situation totally unprecedented. I can't even believe it. Totally unprecedented, totally mind-blowing. We're going to keep updating you about what is going on over here, of course, as I always promise to do so. Okay, so moving on here, these stories just get crazier and crazier, but a DOJ official was recently compromised in an online sting by an operative. Okay, they were a news operative. It was an undercover hinge date, which, believe it or not, sounds crazy. A date gone wrong. If you ever think you would have a crazy date story, this guy's going to have one forever and ever and ever. But basically, they're doing damage control. The Department of Justice is doing damage control. And basically, they're claiming about the truth. This DOJ official was claiming the truth about what is actually happening in the Epstein case. Now, if you're wondering how crazy this is, I want to show you the video so that you can judge for yourself, because I was blown away when I watched it, and I'm sure you will be too. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and pull this up here. Give me just a moment. All right. And if you can't believe it, neither can I. So here we go. Check this out. All right, we go back a little bit.
Exists.
Yeah.
But those files do exist.
Yeah, thousands and thousands of pages of files. They'll redact every Republican or conservative person in those files, leave all the liberal, democratic people in those files.
So did you hear what he said? They're on a date, and he's just exposing information. He said what they will do. They will redact. First of all, he says the files are real, and they do exist. Trump says it's a hoax. Obviously, we know that's not true. But he said they will redact every Republican or conservative in the files and leave all the liberal Democratic people. Does it not sound like a weaponization of the justice system? Let's continue.
Is that Maxwell person?
Yeah.
Speaking of Ghislaine Maxwell.
And also involved?
Got transferred to a minimum security prison too recently, which is against GOP policy because she's a convicted sex offender.
Did you hear that? It is against Bureau of Prisons policy to send a sex offender to a minor security prison or a lower security prison because she's a convicted sex offender. But clearly there's a deal that's been cut. Let's keep listening.
They're offering her something to keep it up.
Do you hear that? They're offering her something to keep her mouth shut. So Joseph Schnitt, who is a DOJ official, top DOJ official, announced that all these things were happening. And it's happening right under our nose. If this is not more evidence to bring us to the conclusion that there is not only corruption that's going on, but that they're covering up this Epstein scandal. And I want you to really understand this. These are children we're talking about here. These are children. These are women. We say we care about women and we care about children. Republicans, they say they're pro-life all the time. They say they want to expose what's going on here, and look at what they're doing. They're covering it up right in front of our face, and then they're gaslighting us and saying, it's not real. It's a hoax. Can you believe that? If in any good conscience, if you're watching this, if you're a liberal, if you're a Republican, let's just get past all of that. As a human being today, if you see what's going on here, if this was one of your daughters or one of your sons, and you heard this report from a top official, and you already know that there's been a bunch of information that's come out, how would you feel about this? Because this tribalism and this cultic or this cult-like environment, this cultish environment, is leading a lot of people to, against their better judgment and own morality, side with and stand up against facts coming out to protect themselves and their own political interest. This is a sad day in America. This official issued a rare apology, calling it a lapse in judgment. But we obviously know this is another cover-up opportunity, another cover-up attempt by this administration and all the departments that are under their control to make the president look good and to hide what's really going on. It's absolutely disgusting. But as you already know, this is what we're dealing with. It is what we're dealing with. On the exact same theme and story, I want to get to this next part here because I'm not somebody who typically agrees with Marjorie Taylor Greene. If you don't know who Marjorie Taylor Greene is, she is a congresswoman, a strong supporter of Donald Trump in the House. But more recently, and specifically since his administration has started, she's made comments that have been critical of Trump. And she's been a staunch ally of his, which is very surprising. But right now, I'm going to show you a clip of Marjorie Taylor Greene, in many ways, sounding a lot like a Democrat on these issues. And also, Mike Johnson is claiming that Donald Trump was an FBI informant and that he was planning to expose what Jeffrey Epstein was doing, that he was actually working with the FBI. So which one is it? Is it a hoax? Was it not true? Did it happen? Was he an informant? We clearly know there's lies going on. I'm also going to show you a video of Nancy Mace, who is a representative, a very, very staunch ally of Trump, who also said that she has been a victim of sexual assault. I'm going to show you a video of her claiming that she feels what these victims are going through, but then turns around and says, well, Donald Trump is such a champion of these women, even though he claims this is a hoax. Let's watch the first video right here of Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is obviously kind of concerning, but of course Trump threatened that GOP members would be in some way targeted. He didn't say that directly, but he said that Republicans would be under some sort of a threat, or there'd be some issue that he would have if these files were released. I'm going to show you this video of Marjorie Taylor Greene over here with these women. We're going to play that. Let me actually switch over. Okay, and here we go.
I've never done a press conference with Marjorie Taylor Greene before.
I know, how surprising.
I've done some with Tufts, but look, this country is divided and exhausted. This is one thing that we can come together on.
So this isn't one political party or the other. It's a culmination of everyone work together to silence these women and protect Jeffrey Epstein.
Once again, I never thought I would be saying this, but Marjorie Taylor Greene is 100% right, irrefutably correct on this issue. This is a cover-up.
And his cabal. And this is not just rich, powerful people. Think his drivers, his maids, his chefs, all the people. Doctors
that were even working. Jeffrey Epstein had dentists working on these girls' teeth. Jeffrey Epstein had doctors making sure they didn't have STDs. Where are these people? Why are they not being implicated?
People that worked in his home, security guards.
So once again, as I said to you before, I never thought that I would be commenting on this and saying that I agreed with Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's obviously very much so something I never thought I would say. But once again, she is 100% right. This is disgusting what's going on. And then to follow up this, as I told you, Mike Johnson claimed Donald Trump was an FBI informant who was working to take down the sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, and then backed away from the segment. Once again, I'm not going to say it to you. I'm going to show it to you because you're going to see for yourself. It's not my words. This is in the man's words himself. Let's watch this video right now so you can hear it for yourself.
You need to stop.
Here comes Mike Johnson. He's coming out of a meeting and
soon. We're working through various ideas on what that can entail, and really.
This is the first video, by the way. I believe this was on the 4th or the 5th when Manu Raju from CNN asked him this question, and then of course he's going to follow it up with comments today. But let's watch this one.
The nationwide crime bill is one of the things on the table. A couple of the areas that we're looking at specifically initially is the juvenile crime problem, which is a big thing around the country that there's some ideas on how to address, and also these restrictive policing policies that have done real harm in major cities. I mean, the same people that were very vocal about the defund police movement now seem to have awakened to the reality.
Okay, I'm going to go forward a little bit just to get to what he said specifically about this here.
Actively working against his team almost daily now, and it seems to enjoy that role. So he is, deciding his own fate.
What about that?
I have bent over backwards to help every member of my conference. As you know, the speaker's job is to lead the incumbent protection program, as I call it. I've had long, thoughtful discussions with Thomas Massey about some of his antics and the way he openly attacks me online almost every hour of every day for sport. Totally unfounded. My way is to reach out an olive branch to everybody and try to be a peacemaker, and some people make that very difficult.
Oh yeah, let's just be peaceful. Let's not talk about the truth. Let's cover everything up and let's try to protect the president. Very noble.
Do you think that he's going to succeed in getting the 6 signatures to force this vote?
I don't expect he will, but I mean, the whole effort has been mooted. It's not necessary anymore. Let me make this very clear, as we've made several times the last couple of days. The Oversight Committee's effort goes further than the discharge. It requests and seeks and is actually gathering more documents. It's even anticipated by the discharge. The discharge is poorly written. It does not adequately protect innocent victims, and that is a very important thing. It doesn't protect whistleblowers or confidential informants or undercover law enforcement agents, which are critical to protect in sex trafficking investigations, obviously. It has lots of problems. The discharge petition goes after the Epstein estate files, which is, we're told by people who know, a treasure trove of information. Discharge doesn't cover it. Discharge doesn't go.
So he's basically saying here that they're trying to do whatever they can to expose this beyond what's been said. But a lot of the files that have been released are either going to be redacted, or those files are already information that we know with just more context. Let's get a little further here.
We're the leading spokespersons yesterday. They sat with the care of this problem with tears. They told us how grateful they were to have the leadership of Congress and all these members dialed in on that. Now, we tip our hats. We are so proud of the heroism and the courage
let me go forward.
The necessity of that. And every single one of them nodded and said, of course, yes, please do that.
But Trump called it a hoax yesterday.
Here we go.
What Trump is referring to is the hoax that the Democrats are using to try to attack him. He has never said or suggested or implied. I've talked to him about this many times.
It comes
He is
across as
horrified.
calling the whole thing a hoax.
It's been misrepresented. He's not saying that what Epstein did is a hoax. It's a terrible, unspeakable evil. He believes that himself. When he first heard the rumor, he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. He was an FBI informant to try to take this stuff down. The president knows and has great sympathy for the women who have suffered these unspeakable harms.
He was an FBI informant. Well, Mike Johnson said this a couple of days ago. And now, today, there is a video of him somewhat backing off of those claims, where he basically says, oh, my comments were taken out of context or they're being misrepresented. So let's go ahead and play that video here.
What do you mean by that?
All right. What I was referring to in that long conversation was what the victim's attorney said. More than a decade ago, President Trump kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago, and he was one of the only prominent people, as everyone has reported, not President Trump, but everybody about him, that he was willing to help law enforcement go after this guy who was a disgusting child abuser, sex trafficker, all the allegations. That's what they heard. So the president was helpful in that. I don't know if I use the right terminology, but that's common knowledge, and everybody knows that. So this is much ado about nothing.
Okay, guys. So clearly this is a lie. It's just clearly a lie. First you say he was an FBI informant. Then you said he was willing to be an FBI informant. Then you're saying it's much ado about nothing. Then it's a hoax. But then it's not a hoax. It actually is real. But then it's like there's Democrats in there that will implicate, but not. We're not stupid. Clearly. This is a covering up of abuses. And what's disgusting about it is that there are people whose actual lives have been impacted. There are women in this case. They are literally saying, listen, y'all don't have to stand with us on this. We are going to create our own files. We'll make our own files, and we'll talk about in our own way what is going on. We'll make our own Epstein list of the people that we know that were on the list, people that we serviced, people that we worked with. The truth about this is going to come out. It's only a matter of time. And I'll just say this, for every GOP senator, for every GOP congressperson that is hiding this and doesn't want this to come out, or that won't stand on business where this is concerned and confront Trump where this is concerned, you are shameful and disgusting. And you're cowardly. Because at some point, this whole MAGA movement and this whole Trump thing, it is not going to survive. It is not going to stand forever and ever and ever. What do you want your legacy to be? Everybody that's supporting this president and supporting these movements and the things that are happening here, what do you want your legacy to be? Do you care about what you say you care about? You say you care about the sanctity of life and you're pro-life. Is this a world you would want your daughter growing up in? Do you want to help to enable other child predators and sex offenders and pedophiles out there? Like that is what we're actually supporting and covering for to protect public image and consolidate and save power. And this is supposed to be the alpha president, the strong man. Real men stand for integrity. Real men and real people, real honest, full of integrity people, they stand up to people like this. They stand up to bullies. They stand up to abuses. They stand up to con artists. They stand up to demagogues like this. And they protect the most vulnerable. They protect our women. They protect our children. They protect those that can't protect themselves. Not their billionaire buddies. Not their sick, sycophantic, depraved, sexually immoral people that are hiding in the shadows and trying to evade justice. It's time for us to stand up. And I pray to God that these files are exposed. I pray to God that whoever is involved, doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, Republican or Democrat, I pray that you are exposed and that you serve a hell of a lot of jail time for the crimes that you have committed. Because you've attacked the most vulnerable. You've attacked the most precious people in our society. And you deserve no defense. Because the real hoax is your innocence. So South Carolina Representative Nancy Mace, who has been a staunch and ardent supporter of President Trump, was clearly shaken up after the press conference last week with Epstein survivors. She claimed that she had a panic attack after hearing some of the stories of the survivors talking about the fact that she thought she was prepared for what they were going to say, but that the conversations just hit a little bit too close to home for her. I'm not sure if many of you are aware of Nancy Mace and her whole background, but essentially she had stated to Congress, I believe it was sometime a few years ago or earlier this year actually, that she herself had or has been a victim of sexual assault. And she stated this. I'll actually go ahead and read directly from this article. She says, quote, and this is a AOL.com article, "As a recent survivor, not 2 years in, I had a very difficult time listening to their stories." Speaking of the victims, "Full-blown panic attack, sweating, hyperventilating, shaking, I can't breathe," Mace wrote on X. "I feel the immense pain of how hard all victims are fighting for themselves because we know absolutely no one will fight for us. God bless all survivors." Now, we know that Donald Trump has repeatedly faced a wave of criticism and also anger and outcry of the desire to see these Epstein files released. And of course, as I've mentioned before, the Trump administration and campaign ran on releasing these files. So what I want to do is very quickly play this clip for you of Nancy Mace talking about this experience. First, I'm going to show you the clip of her being there at the Capitol. You're going to see her walking and obviously in tears. And then I'm going to play you a clip right after that of her talking about the experience. So let's go ahead and let's watch this now. Okay, so that's the first clip there. We can clearly see that she's very emotional about the situation. And then this is the actual clip of her discussing why she was experiencing the emotions that she experienced. So let's go ahead and open that up here. Okay.
So they advocate for their cause.
All right, wait 1 second. I want to play that. All right, let me go back here.
So we had a meeting with the victims on Tuesday. I was okay until our victim set up. And it really hit close to home. She talked about her fear coming to the Capitol. And when she got into the elevator and in the building, the Capitol, she asked herself, am I safe? And I have to tell you, it hit close to home because I have a stupid fear so stupid. This started about 2 years ago. I have a fear of being in elevators with people I don't know. I don't feel safe. And it's a quirky thing. Usually happens when I'm at the Capitol because that's where I'm mostly at elevator access somewhere. I had a huge fear when I stepped into an elevator, and I can't explain it. I don't know if it's the PTSD. It seems like an irrational type of fear. I don't feel safe. And when she said that, I thought, God, that's her story. That's my story. It's so.
Okay. So, as I mentioned before, we can clearly see in this conversation that Nancy Mace is having, or the video she recorded, that she's very shaken up about this, and she understands the impact that this has had on survivors. Nancy Mace is typically not somebody that I would hold in a lot of good faith. She has defended Donald Trump left and right for things that are absolutely insane and ridiculous. And in many ways, I think it is for political expediency. Of course, if you want to pander towards the Trump base and try to get a little bit of a bite of or a slice of the cake, or a slice of the pie, if you will, or a bite out of the apple for the MAGA base, come 2028, a lot of times people like this, they will side with the president and try to be as closely connected to him as possible so that they themselves can go ahead and consolidate support should they have higher political aspirations in another election year. Where I will say that I empathize with her on this is that her talking about her experiences with sexual assault, it's very, very important, the conversation of sexual assault in the country right now. And a lot of women, a lot more women than men, although men experience it, and oftentimes their stories, our stories in these type of circumstances are often either disregarded or not paid attention to. It's a very, very clear and present problem that we have in the country and also the world. And so I do think we have to speak up more, specifically as men. We need to speak up more about these things. And wherever we see it happening, wherever we see in public, if we're at a bar or at a club and we see a man, putting his hands on a woman in a way where it is not consensual or it is not invited, we need to be the ones to stand up against that, speak out against that, and even be physical with somebody like that, or be firm if it calls for it, because we've got to go back to protecting people in our society. That's one of the jobs I believe we have as men, is to protect people that are vulnerable in our society. That's not to say that women can't take care of themselves. It's not to say that women can't protect themselves. But as messed up as this is, there are some men that only will respect the word of another man, or the aggression of another man, or the presence of another man. And until we get better at dealing with this problem in our society, and this is something that we begin to see less and less of, it's our job, I believe, to stand up for those that are vulnerable, or those that can't necessarily stand up for themselves, or are afraid to because they think it may be the end of their life. I mean, I've seen things where a guy will walk up to a girl and try to get her number or ask her out, and then she'll reject him. And then he'd be like, "Oh, I didn't want your number anyway," yelling all sorts of expletives and crass remarks to that woman when he clearly a second ago just wanted to get her contact information. And so I think that's just a thing that's very, very important to me as somebody who has sisters and a decent amount of female friends, and used to work security at a bar and saw this stuff happen all the time. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, while Nancy Mace, I think, I'm not even going to pat her on the back for this one because this is so obvious that this is how things are supposed to be. While she did the right thing here, which I think anybody in their right mind that has some sanity would do, later that same day, she told the Independent's Washington, D.C. bureau chief, Eric Garcia, that she was, quote, not worried about crossing Trump on the issue of Epstein, praising him as a hero as he attempts to distance himself from Epstein. She said, quote, Donald Trump is the one who banned Jeffrey Epstein from Mar-a-Lago. He was an FBI informant, and he talked to the feds to get this guy turned over. So Donald Trump is a hero in this. I mean, it just gets worse and worse. I mean, These people are so desperate. They're so desperate to hide any sort of implication of Donald Trump. They're so desperate to keep his favor and goodwill that they are willing to not even talk about these issues and break away. And like I said, I don't like Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm not a fan. I disagree with her on a lot of things, but at least she's willing to stand up and say, listen, this is not right. This is not okay. And she's broken with Trump on a variety of issues since he became president. Nancy Mace also had said, this was back, of course, in February of 2025, when she spoke before Congress, she said, quote, I accidentally uncovered some of the most heinous crimes against women imaginable. And this is in regard to digital cache that she had found of more than 10,000 videos and photos that showed her former partner, Patrick Bryant, and his business associates abusing numerous women, including herself. So she said, we are talking about rape, non-consensual photos, and non-consensual videos of women and underage girls, and premeditated, calculated exploitation of women and girls in her district, okay? Now, obviously, Patrick Bryant is categorically denying these allegations, and Nancy Mace has not presented any evidence so far, but she has said very, very clearly and has been very, very vocal since 2021 about her past experiences of rape and sexual assault, and has pitched herself as a defender of women's rights while still supporting restrictions on abortion and campaigning Donald Trump, who was found liable for his sexual abuse in a civil trial regarding E. Jean Carroll, who was the plaintiff in the situation. So once again, it's a very, very strange situation because on the one hand, you're standing up for the rights of others and saying that you care. But on the other hand, you're supporting and standing with a president that is calling this case a hoax, that is saying that these things are not true, that is saying that this letter that even the House Oversight Committee just released, the birthday letter that was given to Jeffrey Epstein, a letter that they wrote between themselves with the outline of a woman's body in it. And we'll talk about that a little bit more next week. But saying these things are not true. It's just pathetic. It's pathetic, drawing the line when it comes to morality and what you care about. It's just so pathetic. But once again, that is what Donald Trump has been able to do with this administration. He's been able to garner power because there are people that don't have enough of a backbone and are too cowardly or afraid of losing their base and afraid of losing political power and a political future when it comes to standing up for the truth. So, hey, we'll continue to monitor it. We'll continue to look at it. But once again, this is revealing fractions within the Republican Party, or fractures rather, and factions within the Republican Party. But it's also just showing you who is willing to actually take a stand where this is concerned and do the right thing. Okay, so I didn't think, I never thought that, there are just some things that you just don't think are very relevant when it comes to, conversations about politics and conversations that are legitimate when it comes to policy and everything like that. But, once again, Republicans on these topics and conservatives, specifically conservative talking heads, continue to blow my mind when it comes to this. Tucker Carlson the other day was having a conversation with another conservative talking head, and I believe his name is Michael Knowles. Yes, Michael Knowles. He was having a conversation with him on his show, and what I thought was really, really strange about this conversation was it just seemed to come out of nowhere, going from talking about substantive things, if that, to questioning if Pete Buttigieg is actually gay. Once again, these are strange things, but Tucker Carlson mocked Pete Buttigieg as a, quote, fake gay guy and reflected ongoing homophobic and right-wing attacks on Democrats. Now, once again, I'm going to play this video for you because the stuff is so crazy that you should be able to see this you should be able to see for yourself that, like, we're kind of losing the plot if we're not talking about substantive things. But let me just go ahead. I'm going to play this video for you and check it out.
I think people respond to incentives. That's exactly right. When you mention these institutions, I think, and Trump is very good at this, beating up Harvard, I think it's a brilliant political attack. You see some of that in Florida, taking in some of the universities. It's happening.
This stuff is hard to watch, just for the record sometimes. Like, I wish that we were back in a time where people that even were conservative, of course, there's always been like the Rush Limbaughs of the world and the culture warriors that kind of blow things out of proportion for views and whatnot. But this stuff, it's just to the point that there's no critique of Trump. There's no critique of the right anymore. It's just agree, bow down, bow down, bow down. So this starts off for what many conservatives would consider to be substantive, but watch what happens.
Around the country. I'll give you a Pete Buttigieg. I don't know Pete Buttigieg.
The fake gay guy?
Way out of left field. But let's keep watching.
I have a friend that's a fake gay.
My gay producer was always like, he's not gay. He was with a girl like 20 minutes ago, and like, he wants to be the Democratic nominee. It's like, time for a gay guy.
He's playing the long game. I mean, that's going down. Look.
Well, it's suffering for your art. I'll say that.
Just because I don't know him, I know 100 Pete Buttigiegs. I know this character.
Oh,
and he went to the elite school, and then he goes to McKinsey, and then he does the checks. And I think
then find some benighted Midwestern town that he can just like become mayor of.
I'm the mayor now. I was talking to a big Democrat figure, and he said, say what you will about Pete. He's the greatest careerist we've ever seen. You're mayor of this tiny town. You become the Secretary of Transport.
No, of course, but the town kind of sucks. Actually, he didn't do.
But the thing about it is with Pete Buttigieg, we know that Pete Buttigieg did not just would just go from just being a mayor all the way to just being at the top. He is a very skilled communicator. His sexual orientation aside, he is a skilled communicator. He is a great debater. He's very, very good at breaking down an argument while not being a bully and still presenting his point of view while still being able to have conversations. I mean, he's gone on Fox News multiple times and been able to do this. There's other, of course, Democratic congressmen, senators, former governors or governors, whatever have you, people like Tim Walz that also do this. I think Tim Walz is a little less skilled in this area, but he's just more good at talking to the common man. But Pete Buttigieg he does a really good job of being able to communicate, right? So it's not just on that. There's also merits, but let's keep watching.
Good job at the college. But I've always wanted to interview him. He's never agreed to interview, but I'm going to ask him like some very specific questions about gay sex and see if he can answer. I doubt he even knows.
Where does?
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah, I don't know.
Gay dude, stop.
Asking him some very specific questions about gay sex. Okay. I mean, Tucker, if you're curious, just say so, bro. I mean, that's just really, really weird. I mean, look, they went on to talk about a lot of other stuff, a bunch of nonsense, of course. But at the end of the day, as I mentioned before, this is the type of stuff that we're talking about. We should be more concerned about policies, and we should be more concerned about what's going to make people's lives better than all this nonsense. Like, at the end of the day, it does not really matter. And I believe this just clearly shows you where conservatives and the Republican Party are at and how low they have stooped in the age and era of Trump. And it's mind-blowing. It's very concerning. So that's all the time that I have for today. If you've been watching this and you want to maybe know more about what's been going on in the case, of course, we'll continue to keep you updated. What are your thoughts about what we've talked about today on the podcast? Go ahead and let me know at _Full Circle Pod on Instagram, at Full Circle Pod on TikTok. Listen, that is all the time that we have for today. Once again, I want to thank you for your time. Have a great one from your favorite brother. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.